So, this every company has become a digital company, especially after COVID. I'm sure you guys have been able to order through Coles and Woolworths and stuff like that. So what's happened is there's a lot of investment happening on the mobile apps and the digital experience as such. But then what companies don't realize is that if an app goes down, your business is down. And although they've invested millions of dollars in making an experience good from an app's perspective, the apps are still residing on servers and operations and data centers which are like 30, 50, 50, 100 years old, right? So what essentially we do is, yes, when it comes to digital, accessing the app is important, but you also need to ensure that the infrastructure on which the app is hosted is up and running. And many a times, companies don't think that as an important investment, and they're very reactive in nature. So what we do is we use AI to kind of predict, what can potentially go down in the next 4 weeks. It could be a server, and we tell you if a server goes down, what does that mean from a customer experience perspective. So in simple terms, we're like soothsayer who tells you, what's going to go down, right, in next 4 weeks or so that you can be more proactive instead of being reactive. So that's how I would summarize what Ketonic is for. And by the way, Ketonic is a herb which helps you sleep peacefully. So it kind of goes well with the, so if by implementing Ketonic, you know that you're in control of the customer experience. So you probably can hopefully sleep better. Yeah. So that's about us, Callum.
So, as a founder of Ketonic AI, what stage is your Ketonic AI at, and how far you've been able to take it so far?
Yeah, so at this moment we are in beta stage. We've completed our platform. We are currently doing proof of value with two of our customers internationally. We're talking to a large bank here in Australia as well. So what we wanted to do was, yes, although bulk of the platform and the idea was built in the last, a year or so, but we wanted to kind of work with the customer to ensure that we have the right features in place. So we are kind of, some of the features we are co-building. I think we should be able to be available generally in say about 3 or 4 months from now. Yeah, but at this moment it's in beta state, working with few very large customers, getting their feedback. They've been very happy so far. Yeah,
What's been the feedback so far?
the feedback has been amazing. I mean, firstly, when we present this to the customer, most of them agree that yes, there is a need required. There is a need to kind of monitor these, uh, you know, uh, I mean, the infrastructure. But then what they feel is that AI is always seen as a very expensive affair, right? But I think of AI as a mobile phone which a common man couldn't afford earlier. Now he can. So IT operations is more like a common man because it's always seen as a cost center. It doesn't kind of generate revenue, but it helps you. It's a revenue keeper, right? It's not a cost center. It's a revenue keeper. So a lot of customers think that it's going to be very expensive. It is going to be very difficult to do. But then when we explain them about the IP we built, and we've also used a lot of open source tools which have been open sourced by companies like Google and Ubers of the world. So when they realize that it's affordable and time to market is quick, they get pleasantly surprised. And so far, the feedback has been very positive. In fact, the customers have said, why are you limiting to just IT operations? Why are you not? Because the platform can cater to any AI use case. Why don't you extend this to business use cases? So in fact, we are working with extending that and offering probably, more or less any kind of AI use case which can be built on the platform.
I mean, congratulations, first off. I mean, just being able to, in the time frame that you mentioned, to be able to, get an MVP, and starting to get customers to, help you build a proof of value. Um, I would say that's a huge success. That's a huge milestone.
Yeah.
Um, how did you walk us through the journey of the success so far? I mean, obviously still early days, but tell us more about how did you end up, acquiring your first few customers, even to do a proof of value.
Yep. No, that's it's been very interesting. So I started up. I started Ketonic in April last year. So it's been 10 months, and I'm sure your comment about how quickly. So one is I think the key success is I got some of the right people. So I have a team of 22, out of which 7 are founding members. Some of them are they've delivered multiple applications earlier. They've had a couple of exits. And I also have Nitin Deshpande, who was heading digital, sales for about 10 or 11 large customers for DXC, managing 200 million worth business. Head of marketing from HP India, who's the chief marketing officer. So I think it's lots to do with the team. So as I started the journey, I found the right people. And more than that, I think they realized that there's a lot of value we can provide to the customers. They believed in me, right? And that's why I think we were able to accelerate. And also, we've used a lot of open source. So our platform is powered by Qflow and Kubernetes. And Qflow, for people who are not very close to AI, it's an open source program from Google. Probably bulk of the Google and bulk of the Facebooks or the such companies use it. So what we've done is we've taken open source and we built our IP, and we've kind of combined that together, put it on Kubernetes, and we offer that on an industry grade service. And we've also got ISO 27001, so that takes care of the data security. So from that perspective, it's best of the breed open source tool. In fact, we are also open sourcing our IP to give back to the community, and that's one of the reasons we've been able to accelerate. It's one because of the open source and the wider community and the team which has been supporting me.
That's a lot of people that you mentioned for a startup. You mentioned you've got 22 people, 7 founding members. What's been the funding journey so far, and how have you been able to bootstrap this, or have you had any funding?
Yeah, so far it's been bootstrapped. We did have some small safe note investments happen from people. I kind of knew in the technology space, but those are very small investments. So mostly it's bootstrapped. And again, like I said, all these founding members believe in it. So most of them are. I call it sweat equity. They're probably not getting much money, but then everyone believes in the story, right? And more than that, I think there is a need for IT operations and IT to embrace AI, right? There's an urgent need. I'm sure there's a lot of downtime. If you see CBA, there's a downtime, and if you take any company, downtimes are there. And if we can use AI to kind of predict and avoid that and provide better customer service, why not, right?
So is this the next unicorn?
Look, I don't. It's very hard to say. Any good idea can become a unicorn. So it's very hard to speculate. So at this moment, our focus has been to build a good product. Maybe acquire 3 or 4 customers, give them good service, and then go after the wider customers. So at this moment, we're more focused on building the product and doing proof of value. We really not thought about what the valuation could be. Maybe we can. I mean, why not?
You mentioned you have a number of banks, and you also mentioned that you have a global bank as well that you're building or testing out the proof of value with. Who do you think would be the most appropriate, ideal customer for you guys?
So, uh, see, like I said, if you just go back to what I said, right, we are in the business of predicting what can go wrong, right? And if I have to predict what has to go wrong, obviously you need to have enough complexity, right? If you are a small company with few, applications and servers, it's probably not going to make sense. So you definitely need to have business critical applications which you are running, and you need to have complex enough applications so that so I would say any company which has upwards of 2 to 3,000 employees, or maybe not employees, but enough critical applications and enough complex infrastructure, they will definitely benefit. But again, like I said, Ketonic, the feedback we've been getting from the customer, and when I talk about how we differentiate, is that why just restrict the use case to IT operations? Why don't you just so we've kind of expanded, and we are working parallelly on extending and making it AI platform which can cater to any use case, and also making it self-service, so that citizen data scientists. So by citizen data scientist, I mean anybody who has like a business analyst or a BI or even a business person. If he wants to implement a AI use case, he should be able to do it using our platform in next 3 4 months.
In terms of the adoption for a lot of the enterprise applications and enterprise platforms in general, it's often common for the US type customers, Fortune 500 companies, some of the large guys that have tens of billions of dollars of IT budgets to be able to invest in technologies like these.
Yep.
Compared to Australia,
Yep.
relatively speaking,
Yep.
not to say Australia um, is not innovative. It's just that often is a late adopter
Yep.
as opposed to an early adopter of technologies like these. How are you finding the appetite for Australian companies vis-a-vis some of the international companies, and how are you dealing with the complexities of the various different approaches, different geographies are at the moment recognizing?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Actually, you read my mind. So, in Australia, the number of large companies are very limited when you compare to US. So at this moment, if you see my team composition, we have 4 member team here, 16 in Australia, but I have 2 members in Australia. So we have presence in US in Austin, Texas. That's the new Bay. So we have Prashant, who's the head of partnership there. So we are definitely at this moment not targeting Australia. So most of the customers we are talking to are in the US or India, because India, one of the large bank we are talking has 500 million customers. No points for guessing the name. And if we can prove a solution there, obviously, we can tighten the loose ends and then definitely go after some of the large organizations here. But to your question, second question, I think Australian companies are definitely innovative. I've got some good pipeline of customers who are keen to do proof of value. I find them a little slower compared to US, but that's the nature of the geography and the complexity of business. But at this moment, our target market has been US. So we're talking to a large telecom company in the US, more or less about to sign the paperwork, and also talking to a few large banks and insurers in India, and a large telecom conglomerate based out of Malaysia. Yeah. So our target is definitely global. That's where we're looking at
Yeah.
to begin with.
So let's talk about you founding this company. I mean, you mentioned that you've only been doing this since April last of year.
Yeah.
That's a very, very short time you've been doing this.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you've got a fairly strong um, traction into the marketplace
Yeah.
at this point. Tell us more about how did you end up starting and founding this startup?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I turned 40, and that was last August. And then I thought I always wanted to start up, right? And in my previous role, which I'll talk a little more about, I worked with a lot of startups, kind of helped them um, get implemented in some of the large customers. And so I thought in August last year that if I don't start up, I'll never start up. So that's when I decided, and then I planned to quit. And then April is when any sales guys quit, because that's when you get your bonus. So it was a planned move, and from a experience perspective, look, if I have 20 years of experience in IT, right? I did my chemical engineering. I'm a chemical engineer, but I got into a company called Tata Consultancy Services. So I used to do coding in the beginning for first 3-4 years, and then I got into pre-sales. That's where I learned how IT helps businesses, and then I got into sales, but it's more as an account and delivery manager. And here in the last 5 years, working with DXC, I've implemented a lot of innovative. So I was part of a lot of innovative initiatives at some of the large banks here. In fact, I was heading blockchain offering as well. So most of the people thought I'll start up in blockchain, but I ended up doing it in AI. So the experience of implementing multiple proof of concepts, design thinking, and working with a lot of startups kind of helped me understand what it requires to make a build a successful uh, product, right? And all those learnings have been helpful. We're not still successful. I mean, time will prove, but definitely all the learnings in the last 20 years combined with my team's learning has helped us accelerate.
So in 20 years, you would have had access to a lot of different use cases. You also mentioned that you've got a very strong blockchain background as well, at
Yeah,
least in the last
yeah,
5 years.
yeah.
Why this idea?
Yeah, so like I said, I've spent 20 years. Where have I spent? I've spent 20 years with IT, right? Mostly on the IT operations, right, or IT teams. And what we've done is we've built all these fantastic, beautiful, amazing projects, right? Be it AI, be it blockchain for other business units, right? So a large insurer, so I lived in many, many countries, Denmark, Sweden, UK, Netherlands, a couple of years in all of these places. A large insurer in Denmark, right? They were delivering such fantastic projects for the customer facing business unit, but IT themselves they were more or less running on Excel. So I felt that IT is like a cobbler who always fixes his shoe last, and there was an urgent need for them to reinvent. Right, there are companies like ServiceNow and Dynatrace which are doing that, but that's not good enough because they're still focusing on a particular silo. Right, you still have data across many silos. So that's where I felt that there was a need, and when there is a need, you need a startup, right? You don't want to have a technology and run behind a problem, but there was a problem shouting and screaming, and there was a problem where I'm comfortable. I understand IT, right? I understand IT operations, and I understand AI, and I was like, how do I use AI to solve this problem? And why this idea is because look, AI, like I said, I think of AI. So I think of AI as iPhone, right, which was not, or a smartphone, which was not affordable by everyone. Now I think AI is kind of commoditized, at least to a great extent, democratized. It is affordable. Now business units like IT operations can use it, and with companies like Ketonic, we've implemented a lot of automation around feature engineering, where when you're building a AI model, 80% of the time goes into feature engineering. We've automated that. In fact, we're open sourcing that for the wider community to test. So yeah, I think that's the background, right? There was a need, there was an experience, and bringing the learnings together will definitely solve that problem.
And at what point do you kind of go, well, I'm comfortable in a, um, in an enterprise like a DXC. It's relatively predictable. It's safe. Great brand name as well. Family may not think bad of you
Yeah.
if you're in DXC. What's been the transition like over since April, getting into the startup world in a very, very different world?
Yeah, it's look. Firstly, when I decided to start up, the COVID came, right? And for me, when COVID was happening, I was a little disheartened. But then I realized that COVID was working in my favor because I was able to get some good skilled people. Happy to work with me because of COVID. They had challenges, and so COVID was definitely scaring me a little bit. But COVID has helped us in a way. We were able to get some good skilled resources, and also we were able to spend more time working closely to build the MVP. So the transition hasn't. It's been easy and tough. From a working style perspective, it's been easy because this is what I was doing at DXC as well. We were doing a lot of innovative projects at some of the large banks here. I've worked on more or less 30, 40 proof of concept and industrialize some of them. So from a work-wise, it's kind of still been the same. But on the finance side and the social side, because when you go to office, meet people, things are nice, and then you have an ecosystem, you have salary coming. So one, I had to keep 2 years of my salary in my wife's bank account so that she's comfortable with this idea. But she's been very supportive, and I come from a community called Sindhis, and all the Sindhis who are listening to me will connect to it. So we are businessmen by nature. So risk taking is in our blood. So I'm here again to prove that I'm Sindhi. So that's a community in India, very similar to Gujaratis. I'm not sure, but but yeah, we are the businessmen of businessmen community of India, the top 2 3 communities. Yeah,
So you're saying the entrepreneurship is in the DNA, it's in the
absolutely,
blood,
absolutely.
and at 40 you got to prove yourself that you can do it.
Absolutely. Most of my cousins who are hearing this are businessmen. Very few of them work. So, yeah, I'm probably following them instead of they following me.
So the question I have for you is this something you could have started sooner?
Absolutely. If you ask me, should I have started this sooner? Yes. But maybe I would have failed because what I've learned in the last 20 years, firstly, I got a lot of good opportunity when traveling around the world. So, like I said, I've lived in the US for 4 years, UK, Denmark, Sweden. So, traveling has helped me understand a lot, right? So, I would have missed that if I had started earlier. Maybe I would have been richer, but that's okay. It's also the experience, and also the experience and the maturity, right? When you spend a lot more time in the enterprise, you become more realistic around the speed at which enterprise works, the complexity they have, and also these 20 years I worked in various roles. I was a technical person, so I'm able to understand what my CTO is saying so that he doesn't bluff if you're listening. Yeah. And I've been PMO, so I understand what my sales operations is saying, right? And I've done sales myself, so that has helped me get a big view, big picture view, and probably will make me a better CEO, or has made me a good CEO. So I've built a good team. We have sales, we have a marketing team, structured it nicely. So yes, I could have started earlier, but I think maturity, experience, even financial stability, because when you don't have the financial stability, you end up making nasty mistakes. So I think I don't have financial pressure at this moment. It's been okay. I can survive for next 2 years without a salary. I have the maturity and the experience. And the traction has been good. So yeah, probably like they say, everything happens at the right time. So this was the right time. Me turning 40. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, congratulations on making this big bold move. Now, I guess let's move to the future,
Yep.
and talk about what are your aspirations? What do you kind of think is the most important thing you're gonna have to achieve in the next, say, 6 months to a year?
Yep. So we follow objective and key results. So always, so we have a solid plan between now and October, right? So at this moment, our plan is to continue strengthening our platform. We've identified a large number of features which the team is busy working with. We want to complete our proof of value with 3 customers by March. Um, Looks like it will be April, May. Get their feedback, harden it. We want to start open sourcing some of the IP we've created so that we can get, because somebody asked me, Prem, why are you open sourcing, right? I said, look, if I have built something really amazing, right, which is going to benefit a lot of scientists, but for me to prove the value of that, I have to win 10 customers and implement. That's when that's going to take a long, long time. So I'm going to open this up to the community, get feedback, and so we're going to be open sourcing, getting feedback, building a community, maybe work with you guys to do a little bit of marketing and building a community around. So we're building an automated feature engineering capability, which I'll talk later. But essentially, do proof of value with 3 customers, complete our platform, implement some of the key features, make it available generally, and then go a little more aggressive on the customers, and potentially do a Series A somewhere in October, November. I'm in discussion with few VCs on that. So that's where we're looking at, Callum.
Yeah. So in terms of, I mean, you talked about the engineering side of that.
Yeah.
How much do you spend? How much time do you spend in engineering compared to the commercialization aspect of things and capital raising? And how do you balance all those three priorities?
Yeah, it's so if I average it across last 3 months, because it's hard to say on a daily basis how much time I spend. So far we've really not actively gone after fundraising. We kind of trended for a while on Crunchbase. I think people who are in the capital raising will understand. It's like LinkedIn for VCs. So we were trending there. So I did have a lot of VCs reach out. We had some good meetings. So we've really not gone after the capital at this moment. So most of my time in the beginning was on engineering, and now off late around commercializing. What would be the deployment strategy, go to market from a pricing perspective. Freemium versus. So that's where most of my energy goes into. So it's like I said, 5 to 10% on raising capital, not too much of a time. We've been meeting a lot of customers as well. So about 20-30% on the customer side, and about 50 to 60 on engineering side, because you need to spend a lot of time on the product, and then talk about the commercialization or the strategy around marketing and sales and commercializing, maybe 20-30%. So that's the rough mix, I would say.
So, in terms of the October capital raise
Yeah.
that you mentioned around Series A in particular, how much you trying to raise, and what do you want to do with that money?
Yeah, so at this moment, like I said, we're doing an MVP, and probably have about 8 to 10 paying customers by October. So which means that our goal is to be self-reliant. And again, our cost base is not very high, because bulk of the engineering team is in India. I do have people in the US and here. So the idea is to be self-sufficient by October if possible. And the funds will be used for basically, like I said, if you ask my team, they have hundreds of features we can add, right? And definitely, spend 30 to 40% of the fund on improving the product, and then also go a little more aggressive on the sales, because if you have to ramp up, you need some good sales guys across the geography, and maybe some marketing. And the other area where we want to spend money is basically filing few patents. We already got we've got 2 innovation patents in Australia. We are in the process of filing 2 patents, standard patents. I think there's more we could do in that space, so kind of spend money there as well. But mostly on making a better product, because if you have a good product, you don't need to sell. Right? People will just buy it, right? Hopefully.
And in terms of COVID, I mean, COVID has changed the way enterprise sales is done
Yeah.
quite significantly.
Yeah.
I think about, I mean, I've spent, as you know, pretty much my 20-year career or so in enterprise sales.
Yeah.
Right? And I look back and I think all of the big tech companies, a lot of the big tech companies are working from home. A lot of the salespeople are now sitting at home.
Yeah.
There is almost no international travel that's happening, at least certainly not in the geographies that we're part of. How do you think COVID is going to change the way you think about going to market and trying to drive sales, and how do you commercialize going forward?
Yeah, that's a very good question. You said how will it change? I'm saying we already changed, right? So when I started off, we wanted to build this platform where the enterprises would use this, and then the data would come from multiple sources, and they would get the outcome. And the idea was to go meet people in person and make it like a platform but what we realized is that a lot of these customers are working from home, remote, and that's why we changed our strategy. So we are also building a front end where the customers can now do self service, versus So that's and they also get a look and feel and get to know how so that we change that because more and more people will be working from home, so you need kind of. And the other on the sales strategy, yes, we are. That's we have hired a very seasoned salesperson in India who's heading both India operations and sales. We're definitely looking at smarter ways of selling. We're not going to be probably having the traditional way of having people all across the geographies, but maybe have a centralized sales where we'll use digital as a channel to sell. Yeah, that's where we're thinking we'll go. But that's probably a year away, and you never know what's for us after a year, right? So yeah,
You spend a fair amount of time, with large corporations like DXE, etc. You understand the sales partnerships, the sales channels.
yeah,
Um, who are potential partners or distribution partners or tech partners otherwise that could be helping you in your cause?
yeah. So see, our strategy is completely partner driven. In fact, if you see, we have a global head for partnership and alliances sitting out of Austin, Texas, in the U.S. Right, and the reason for that is, see, firstly, it's very hard to be everywhere, right? Secondly, it's very hard to think of all the possible use cases your platform can solve, right? Three, even if a customer likes you, it takes zillions of years to get through the procurement to get the signature, and so you can't. So our strategy is to work with partners. So we have three kind of go to I mean partners from a go to market perspective. So we have partners like um, large SIs, so like DXE, ATOS. We are in very close discussion with ATOS to do a global partnership. Um, Other large companies, pure play SI players, Accentures of the world, and even boutique AI companies, right? So that's one. The second is the technology partners like Microsoft, AWS. In fact, we are part of the Microsoft startup program. We are probably one of the top 100 in the APAC. That's what they told me. And the idea is to use them as a channel. So this product, the platform we're building, will be available on both Azure and AWS as part of the general availability. So the customers will be able to get both free trial and install and use it. And the third kind is you'll be very surprised. It's infrastructure or server provider like HP and Dell, because no matter how much we talk about cloud and digital, the data is still going to be 60 to 70% of the data will still be on prem, right? Which mean and it's very the reason big data was formed is because data was difficult to move, so they took the processing to the data, and we can't expect the data come to where AI is. So we have an on-prem, or rather we're working on an on-prem version, and that's where we will partner with HP and Dell, and since it's on Kubernetes, it's not hard, and work with them. They love to sell servers. We give them another reason to sell a server to the customer, and together we provide a and in fact, companies like HP, Dell can be users of our platform as well, because they offer a lot of managed services, they offer a lot of infrastructure, and they can potentially use us. So that's the three key channels through which we'll be doing business, and that's why we have a very seasoned guy called Prashant Joshi. He's 30 years in the industry, ex-IBM and all the large companies you can think of, who's front-ending this. We made some good progress on the partnerships, and you'll hear some announcements soon.
I'm just going through kind of like your typical top 10 things everybody looks into an SI. I mean, sorry, a startup, and looks like you've got a lot of the tick boxes that are checked. What are some of the areas that you think are still to be developed further, or areas you're still trying to think that, oh my God, if I only had that extra?
See, w- I think one area where we really need to improve is temptation to do everything. So what happens is we have this use case where we're working on the IT operations, right? And like I said, we build this automated feature engineering which cuts down data scientist time by 80%. So when we go present to the customers, they get excited. They're like, why don't we use your platform for underwriting? Why don't we use it for customer churn? And then we get quite excited. So I think one of the area where we probably need to improve is kind of a draw a line to ourselves on where we want to focus for the next 6 months, and then I think we've done that. We've had a reset a meeting a few days back to kind of put things on stone, so that these are the only things we'll be doing. So that's one area where we need to work on. The other area where we need to probably work on is start meeting more startups. So because of COVID, a lot of things have happened in isolation. It was not in purpose. We've kind of done. So it would be good to meet more startups, engage them, and also look at potential partnership say for example, our platform, you can actually go live with a use case and offer a API which can do a certain prediction. So if you're a startup and if you want to offer some kind of prediction to your company, well, don't reinvent what we've done. You just come to us and we can even white label what we have. And in weeks, you'll be able to offer, say, API as a service. So collaboration is where we probably need to work on, and open sourcing. So we're looking at bringing in head of open sourcing for us. We're going to be open sourcing. On the collaboration side, I think I've started meeting more and more people. This is one opportunity I've got. So yeah, I think these are the areas where we definitely need some work on, and I think we've been working on.
So in terms of the next steps, I mean, what do you see is your kind of vision over the next 3 to 5 years? Where would this startup be if
Look,
all things go to plan?
yeah, look, it's very hard to predict, but if all things go to plan, definitely we want to build one of the best AI platform. One thing which frustrates me is a lot of innovation happens in outside of Australia, right? And what we wanted to do was build some of the best AI platform coming out of Australia. And if things go as per plan, obviously, once we raise Series A, we will be a global company. Definitely want to work with more startups and create an ecosystem here so that we can have more and more interesting startups coming out and then leverage some of the learnings we have. So I want to be a serial entrepreneur, if you ask me. Next 5 years, have multiple companies which are kind of helping each other and be part of the community. Maybe be Callum, I would say.
Sure, would love to kind of figure that out.
Yeah.
I guess, I guess the leading question on that is you talked about learnings. 10 months into this new brave world, and you mentioned it's kind of in your blood anyway, right? What has been some of the most critical learnings for you in this journey so far?
No points for guessing cap table. It took me a while to kind of figure that out, in spite of my mathematical acumen. Yeah, lots to learn and a lot of varieties you need to learn, right? So definitely understanding the jargons, pre-series A, series A, series B, seed. These were like jargons which I had to pick up, understand cap table, equity, safe notes, convertible notes. So I think that was quite yeah, that was a learning curve. But I think there's a company called Cake Equity. I want to mention that they have some good articles, and it's an Australian-based startup. So that's helped me quite a bit. So good job there, guys. Yeah, so that's one area, and the second one was I had spent a lot of time on blockchain. So technically, I understood blockchain really well, but I had to go back and understand AI quite a bit to the nut and bolt level. So I had to spend a lot of time understanding AI, the models, how it works, the machine learning operations side. So I had to spend a lot of time from a technical perspective as well. So it's been an interesting journey picking up aspects across marketing, some of the interesting tools like like this podcast we're doing. We did some live podcast as well, so we had to figure out what tool to use. So it's been interesting learning, Callum.
So I guess we're kind of coming towards the last segment of that. I'm gonna pass it off on to Ashwin to see what is our audience asking.
Yeah. So the first question that we have from our audience is, so what was the biggest obstacle that you have faced, and what would you like to convey to the viewers today? You know, to in advance, have a view over these obstacles, face them, and then move forward with that.
Okay, so the biggest obstacle will probably be your partner. She'll think you're crazy. Once you cross that, that's going to be a problem for everyone. So I'm not going to talk about that. You'll deal with it case by case basis. I think, look, see, the biggest mistake people do is they think an idea is good and they jump and they start up, and then there would be a good chance for winning, but because you're under financial pressure, you end up making a lot of mistakes. And because you're under financial pressure, you can't afford a team, so you end up failing. So I think the learning is one: if you have a startup idea, don't jump into it. Talk to somebody, mentors like Callum. You can reach out to me, right? Talk to them, get some feedback, and if talk to at least 10 people, and then do a little bit of MVP, while you're working. Don't just jump into it. And only when you feel that the idea is viable, jump into it. Obviously, you need to ensure that you take care of yourself financially. But one thing you should also understand is that the government here is very, very supportive. The government of Australia, there's a lot of benefits which are provided for startups. So there's R&D benefits, there's commercialization benefits. So make yourself aware of that, and then have a proper plan in place. Look at how to build a team and have a 1 year financial plan. And then only if you can afford not to get a salary and invest about 15, 20, 30K per, depending on what you're trying to do, jump in. Otherwise, wait for some time. It's never too late. I'm 40, I started up, so it's never too late. You can always get some financial stability, and instead of buying a house, maybe you can start up. So yeah, patience, and also teamwork, and then validation and mentorship. These are the four key things I would say.
And what do you see as the future for tech and AI, for the AI tech, especially in Australia?
Absolutely. Look, AI is everywhere. I mean, 5 years back, only the large companies were looking at AI. Now everyone can leverage AI. Like I said, AI is like smartphone where everyone can afford, and that's where companies like Ketonic come in. Definitely, AI will be everywhere. Even small and medium businesses like coffee shops, they will be able to use AI to predict what is the number of resources they need next week, and optimize their resources, right? So there are companies who are using AI to predict what is that you should do to increase your revenue, right? Maybe shut the shop at 8 because you save the cost between 8 and 9, and what is that you could do to reduce cost. So there's a lot of use cases AI can help, and like I said, the Australian government and the ecosystem here is really becoming matured, and I see a lot of startups, and one of the thing I said, look, I'm very frustrated that not much innovation happens in AI. Like most of the companies I've been following are in the US. So I think things will change. We will definitely, have some good AI companies in Australia coming in next 2 3 years, and we definitely Ketonic is one of them, which will, yeah, leading the way.
Definitely.
Awesome. So
Back to
we're
you.
coming at the top of the hour. So Prem, thank you so much for being with us. It's been fantastic having you, and all the best for Ketonic AI.
Thank you, Callum. Pleasure, and thank